The sky bled rust above the outer rim of Zone 6. Red dust swirled across the steel bones of a half-built refinery, wind howling through hollow girders like the wail of a dying god. Beneath that mournful chorus stood Jace Rourke, Foreman, a man carved from muscle, rust, and repetition. The desert sun had burned his skin into parchment and branded his arms with the kind of scars that came not from war, but from machines that never slept. He stood alone by the edge of the worksite, one foot resting on a cracked pipeline, watching dusk pull its veil across the horizon. The ground below still trembled faintly with the echoes of drills gone silent, the scent of ozone and fuel hanging like a ghost in the air. For once, there was no hammering, no shouting, no urgency, just wind and silence. It was the kind of silence that came before something awful. Jace wasn't a man prone to superstition, but even he knew better than to trust quiet in Zone 6. The calm on his wrist chirped. Static, then a voice. You received a package. Jace furrowed his brow. He hadn't ordered anything. Supplies weren't due for another week. What kind of package? No answer. Just silence, followed by a whisper that wasn't his own. This is for what you did. Then the signal died. He straightened, heart tapping a new rhythm against his ribs. That voice hadn't come from the company channel. It had come from somewhere else. Somewhere off-grid. The last time he'd heard a voice like that was in Red Valley. The wind kicked harder now, like the desert itself held its breath. Then he heard it, something far below the range of man or machine. A growl, low and guttural, rolled through the valley. Not a mechanical whine, not a wild animal. It was deeper, hungrier. He scanned the ridgeline and saw eyes. Two golden orbs flickered against the darkening sky, not reflecting the light, radiating it. They blinked, and then something massive emerged from the shadows, moving with the silence of snowfall and the promise of death. It was a wolf, or something close. But wolves didn't stand taller than horses. Wolves didn't have metal stitched beneath their fur. Wolves didn't wear scars that looked like they were earned in laboratories instead of forests. The creature didn't snarl. It studied, watching him, judging. Jay stood his ground. He'd faced plasma fires, rig collapses, and even that riot in Sector 9, but never this. His hands stayed at his sides. Running wouldn't help. Begging wouldn't matter. The wolf moved forward, silent on massive paws, each step displacing dust without sound. Its breath fogged in the cooling air, hot and steady. The metal under its hide shimmered. An exoskeleton meshed into muscle, humming faintly with kinetic potential. Jace exhaled slowly. So, he muttered, you're the package. The wolf bared its teeth, not in threat, but in what almost looked like acknowledgement. He recognized the engineering. Black Fong Protocol, a predator born in dark labs, trained to respond only to the matriarchs of the outer clans. Genetically fused instincts, emotion override, kill on command. There was only one person who could have sent it. Velra. He hadn't seen her since Red Valley, not since the demolition orders came down in the sanctuary. Her sanctuary was cleared for industrial use. He hadn't known what lived there, who it belonged to, not until fires had already turned skyward and her voice broke through the crowd, screaming his name like it was both a curse and a prayer. He remembered her face, dirt-streaked, eyes wild with grief, a child clutched to her chest. That child scream. The way Velra looked at him then, like he was the blade that had killed something sacred. That was years ago, and now she'd sent this thing. The wolf took another step closer. It was so near he could smell the heat radiating from its body, the faint metallic scent of synthetic adrenaline. It lowered its head, coiled its muscles. This was the moment. Jace met its gaze. He didn't speak, didn't move. He only looked. And somehow, the wolf saw him, not the foreman, not the company man. It saw the pain behind his silence. The weight of every bad order he'd followed. The guilt that had eaten him slowly over the years. His failure in Red Valley hadn't been an act of malice. It had been ignorance, sanctioned by bureaucracy. But that didn't matter when you were the one holding the detonator. The wolf tilted its head. Jace could see scars in its eyes, too. Old pain. They were the same. The predator and the man stared at each other for what could have been minutes or hours. The wind screamed again. Still neither moved. Then slowly, unbelievably, the beast sat back on its haunches. It didn't attack. It waited. Jace blinked. "You're not going to kill me." No answer, of course. But something passed between them. A current. A bridge. Carefully, Jace stepped forward. 1 step. 2. Then reached out, not to touch, but to offer. The wolf leaned in. Nose brushed his hand. Breath hot against the skin. Then it lowered further, pressing its front legs to the ground in a position that seemed impossibly like an invitation. Jace hesitated. "You're serious." A low rumble, not a growl. Something deeper. He moved slowly, mounting the beast's broad back, gripping the thick fur at its nape. Muscles rippled beneath him, coiled like wire. He'd ridden wild transports before, once even broke a hover drake. But this felt different. The wolf rose, and with a mighty leap, it bounded off toward the ridge, moving like wind, like fire, like purpose-made flesh. They crested the ridge in seconds. The facility shrank behind them, lights flickering as alarms finally began to scream. Drones lifted off from silos. Too late. Jace didn't look back. For the first time in years, he wasn't running from guilt. He was riding toward something unknown. Toward her. Toward redemption. As the wolf ran beneath the stars, Jace held on, not in fear, but in trust. There was no protocol for this. No manual. Only instinct. Only the understanding that something had changed. Whatever this was, it was no longer a kill mission. It was a reckoning. Far above, beyond orbit, in a dark chamber filled with bioscreens and pulse readouts, Velra watched the feed cut to static. Her hand, still hovering over the kill switch, trembled. He was supposed to die. Instead, he rode. And for the first time in a long, long time, she wasn't sure who the real monster was. The beast ran for hours without slowing. It moved like it was born of the land itself. Every leap, every shift of weight, perfectly in sync with the broken terrain beneath them. Jace clung tight to the coarse fur, muscles aching from the strain, eyes fixed on the horizon. He had no idea where they were headed. The wolf didn't need directions, and Jace no longer cared to question them. All that mattered was forward. The refinery was long behind him now, nothing but a dull smear on the skyline. Night had settled over the desert in full, and with it came the cold, the kind that didn't just touch skin. It sank into bone, but the wolf radiated heat like a forge. Jace found himself leaning into it, not for warmth, but for something deeper, something almost like comfort. He didn't speak. It didn't ask. Hours passed. Finally, the creature slowed. They had reached a plateau overlooking a sunken valley cloaked in shadow. Jagged rocks jutted from the earth like broken teeth, and low fog clung to the floor below. A once flourishing village sat crumbled within, metal frames half sunken in ash. It was a ruin now, forgotten by the world but not by him. Red Valley, the place where everything had gone wrong. Jay slid off the wolf's back, boots crunching against loose stone. He took a breath and let it burn in his chest. He'd returned here 1,000 times in his mind, always with guilt, always with regret. But now, the physicality of it struck harder. He could still smell the memory of smoke, feel the heat of that day burning in the ghost of the wind. "You brought me back," he murmured, more to himself than the beast. The wolf sat behind him, quiet as ever. He descended the slope slowly, navigating the rubble with practiced caution. The old town hall was still partially intact. Its dome collapsed, but its foundation holding. He paused outside it, running his hand along the scorched wall. Voices echoed from the past. There are families down there. This area is marked red. Immediate clearance. You don't understand. These aren't rebels. The guilt clung tighter. He stepped through the doorway, past rusted doors hanging on broken hinges. Inside, a flicker motion caught his eye. He froze. Then a voice, soft but sharp. You came. He turned. Velra stood beneath the fractured skylight, shrouded in a cloak the color of storm clouds. Her face was older than he remembered, but her eyes, those eyes, still burned with that same wildfire. Pain, strength, fury. I didn't think I'd see you again, Jay said quietly. Nor I. You. Not alive, anyway. A beat passed. Neither moved. You sent it, he said. She nodded once. I did. You meant for it to kill me. Another nod. Jace exhaled. Then why didn't it? I don't know. She stepped closer, gaze narrowing. You tell me. He hesitated. I didn't fight. I didn't run. Is that it? Her voice sharpened. You think mercy earns forgiveness? No, his jaw tightened. But I didn't come here to beg for anything. Her expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes shifted, just a flicker. Then why come? Jace looked around the ruin. Because I needed to see it, to face it. Velra crossed her arms. You think that makes you different from the others? You think they came back? To see what they destroyed. I'm not like them. You wore their uniform. I followed orders. So did the bombers. So did the drones. He looked down, the weight of her words hitting like hammers. I didn't know what this place was. Not until it was too late. Velra's eyes glistened, but her voice remained hard. We were a sanctuary, a neutral zone. Healers, refugees, children. You flattened it for a pipeline we both know was never finished. I didn't choose the target, he said quietly, but I chose not to ask questions. Silence hung thick between them. Then Velra turned her head slightly. You know what they call it now? The company? Asset reclamation zone. Like this was nothing more than land. She stepped forward, standing just inches away now. You killed my brother, my neighbors, my people. You didn't just bury us, you erased us. Jace didn't move, and yet you brought me back here. Her lips pressed into a hard line. Because I wanted to see what kind of man you become. I don't expect you to believe I've changed. No, but I had to know. They stared at each other, the chasm of grief and history yawning between them. Then a low sound broke the moment. The wolf, still perched at the entrance, let out a quiet whine. Velra glanced back. I raised her from a pup, she said. She's not just a weapon. She was born of the forest, before the engineers took her and turned her into something they could program. She's more than that now. Velra nodded. She chose you. Jace lowered his voice. Why would she do that? Because animals know what people forget. They feel truth. He sat down on a collapsed bench, exhaustion finally catching up with him. I never wanted to be a destroyer. I wanted to build things. Roads, outpost systems. But somewhere along the line, I stopped asking who those things were for. Velra remained standing, arms still folded. And now, he met her eyes. Now I want to undo what I can. If I can. Her face didn't soften, but she didn't turn away either. I have records, she said finally. Files, coordinates. The names of every sanctuary still marked for demolition. I've been trying to warn them, help them relocate, hide. But I don't have the reach. Or the tech. I'm one voice screaming against a machine. Jay stood slowly. You're not alone anymore. She studied him. Why should I trust you? Because I know what it means to live with ghosts. The wind picked up again, howling through the shattered walls. The wolf walked forward, slowly approaching Velra, brushing her side before settling beside her. She reached down, running fingers through its fur. Then she looked back at Jace. There's a group moving through Sector 12, she said. 3 sanctuaries. 2 days before the sweep drones arrive. Then we move tonight. She held his gaze, searching for cracks, for pretense, but found none. Finally, she nodded. Outside, the stars blinked to life, watching as the pair emerged from the ruin, not as enemies, not yet as allies, but something between. The wolf stood between them, eyes glowing faintly, a silent witness to the impossible. As they prepared to leave Red Valley behind, Jace turned for one last look. He saw not rubble, but the place where he was reborn. And deep inside, something shifted. Not redemption. Not yet, but perhaps the first step. They moved through the canyons like shadows, silent and swift. By day, they slept beneath rock overhangs and abandoned stations, concealed from satellite eyes. By night, they rode the wind. The wolf, whose name Jace learned was Kyra, led them with uncanny precision, nose to the ground, ears ever alert. Velra carried the maps. Jace carried the weight. Each sanctuary on their list was a flickering light in a galaxy of dark, unrecognized, unofficial, and marked for obliteration. The corporations didn't just extract resources anymore. They extracted memory. Villages became ghost data. People became anomalies in logistics, erased not just from maps, but from the world's memory. Jace had once called that efficiency. Now it tasted like ash. Their first stop was a forested ridge nestled beneath what used to be River Point Dam, now dry and gutted. Dozens of families had built homes within the hollows of ancient trees, crafting wind turbines from salvaged rotors and plumbing water from underground springs. They lived without broadcasts or AI assistance, preferring silence to surveillance. When Velra and Jace arrived, sentries appeared from the trees with crossbows and wary eyes. "They know me," Velra whispered, lifting a hand in greeting. "Stay back." Jace watched her approach the guard slowly. No weapons, no sudden moves. A series of signs were exchanged. Finger to heart, 2 fingers to lips, a circle drawn in the air. Trust, peace, warning. She gestured for him to follow. The leader of the enclave, an elderly woman named Toma, wore a cloak of feathers and walked with a limp, but her eyes missed nothing. When she spotted Jace, she reached for the hilt of her machete. "He was one of them," she said coldly. "He's not anymore," Velra replied. Toma's gaze drilled into Jace like a drill into rock. "And what does he want?" "To help," he answered, voice steady. Toma snorted. "That's what they said when they dropped rations laced with tracking chips. When they gave our children medkits that glowed in the dark." Velra stepped between them. "We don't have time to argue. A drone sweep's coming in under 36 hours. You need to move. Now." The old woman didn't blink. "And where will we go?" "There's a mining shaft west of here," Jay said. "Abandoned. Its vents are shielded. I checked the sensor networks. They think it's collapsed." Toma narrowed her eyes. "You checked?" she asked. "I used to run logistics for their reclamation ops," Jay said. "I know where the blind spots are." There was a long silence. Finally, Toma gave a short nod. By sunset, the entire village was on the move. Children rode on carts pulled by hand. Elders leaned on shoulders. Supplies were packed with military precision, guided by Jace's old skills, now finally used for something he could stand behind. Kyra circled perimeter like a silent sentinel, growling once when a low hover drone passed too close. But it veered away, unaware of the life crawling below. When they reached the shaft, Jace was the first inside, clearing the entrance and checking the structure. The place had long since been stripped, but the air was clean and the walls stable. He led them deep inside, securing side passages and marking exits. When Toma entered last, she gave him one long look, then silently nodded. They stayed for 2 nights, resting, healing. Children laughed again. A boy offered Jace a wooden carving of a bird. "For helping," he said shyly. Jace took it gently, his throat tightening. On the 3rd morning, they moved on. That pattern repeated: arrival, distrust, warning, flight. Sometimes they were too late, and they arrived to silence. Ash, burn marks. Once, the still smoking remains of shelter where 23 had once lived. Velra wept that day, silently, a hand over her mouth as she knelt in the soot. Jay stood behind her, not touching, but not leaving either. One night, as they camped on the edge of a dried lake bed, he finally asked, "How many have you saved?" Velra stared into the flames. "Too few." "And how many have you tried to?" "Every single one." He watched the firelight flicker on her face. For the first time since they had met, she looked tired, not physically, so tired. "You carry so much," he said. She glanced at him. "So do you?" He shook his head. "I carry guilt. You carry everyone else." She didn't argue. Another pause. "Why me, Velra?" he asked quietly. "Why not let Kyra finish what you sent her to do?" She turned toward him, eyes reflecting starlight and something deeper, wounds too old to close. "Because when she came back without blood on her fur, I thought maybe the universe had made a mistake. Or maybe it gave me another chance. Another chance to see what kind of world was still possible. One where even a soldier can change." Jace didn't reply. He didn't know how. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of memory, of pain, of things unsaid. The following morning, they reached Sector 12, the last sanctuary. It wasn't hidden, not like the others. It was bold, a converted station built from 3 abandoned freighters, fused together and half buried in the dunes. Solar towers gleamed under the sun. Children played on rusted catwalks. Music echoed across the desert, real music, with voices and drums and laughter. They were too exposed. "They've grown complacent," Velra said grimly. "They've forgotten how close the sky can fall," Jace murmured. A man approached them from the gates. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with mechanical arm and eyes that held years of leadership and battle. "Velra," he greeted, "and him." Jace didn't flinch. "I remember you," the man said. "You were at the Southern Dig, the one who demanded our names for the registry." "I was," Jace admitted, "and now I'm here to help." The man studied him. "Funny how many want to help after the fires already burned the house down." Velra stepped in. "He's the reason we saved River Point. The reason Toma and her people are alive." The man nodded once. "Then you bought one chance. Use it." He ushered them in. Inside the compound, preparations were already underway. The leader, who went by Corin, had received intel about the sweep drones, but lacked precise timing. That's where Jace came in. He accessed an old satellite interface, still half operational through black market access, and calculated a trajectory. "They'll be here in 12 hours. Then we have 10 to vanish," Corin said. Together, they crafted a plan. Children and elders would evacuate through the dunes to a series of caves 5 kilometers south. Fighters would stay behind long enough to confuse the thermal readers. Dummy signatures, heat balloons, EMP mines. It was daring, risky, but it was the only way. Velra watched Jace through it all. Watched him command, Strategize, lead, not with arrogance, but with clarity. He never shouted. He never hesitated. And when someone questioned him, he listened. That, more than anything, convinced her he was no longer the man she'd marked for death. When the final hour came, the sun dipped low, bleeding gold across the sky. The evacuees slipped into the dunes. Jace, Velra, and Corin remained behind. As the first drone's shadow crossed the sand, Velra whispered, "You don't have to stay. You've done enough." Jace looked at her. "No, I haven't." Corin chuckled. "He's stubborn. I like him." Then the sky lit up, not with fire, but with a shimmer of sensor scramblers, EMP bursts, and false targets. The drones blinked, lost altitude, scanned and rescanned. Confused, delayed, long enough for the last evacuee to vanish over the ridge. Corin detonated the final charge. The compound collapsed inward, swallowing its secrets. Sand and steel. Jace watched the dust rise. "You think they made it?" he asked. Velra nodded. "I know they did." Behind them, Kyra howled, a long, low cry that echoed into the desert night. Not mourning, victory. For the first time in weeks, Jace smiled. But deep in his chest, something stirred. They had saved many, but the war was far from over. And somewhere in the stars above them, the machines were learning, adapting. Soon, this fragile window would close. And when it did, they would be ready. The winds had shifted. They always did after a purge. Jace had learned. The desert held its breath, as though listening for the footsteps of survivors or the hum of returning machines. But this time, it wasn't fear that filled the air. It was a calm, an eerie stillness that preceded something greater. They had saved Sector 12. 1,000 souls moved like whispers beyond the dunes, deeper into the canyon systems that even corporate satellites rarely scanned. Jace walked beside Velra, his boots carving quiet trails into the sand. Kyra moved ahead, ears flicking. They were ghosts, shadows, protectors now. But the truth loomed ahead like a storm on the horizon. This wouldn't be the last attack. The system wasn't just built to extract resources or suppress rebellion. It had learned to see compassion as inefficiency. That's what frightened him the most. They reached the new hideout on the 4th day. It was deeper than anything they'd encountered before, an old geothermal plant carved into the rock beneath a collapsed mountain. The path down was treacherous, winding through rusted tunnels and heat-bleached steel. But once inside, Jay saw it, a community growing in the dark. Lanterns made from scavenged drones hung from pipes, casting warm light. Children played with scraps of copper and glass. Elders hummed old songs beneath mural-covered walls. This was resilience. This was a heartbeat they couldn't code out of humanity. Velra stood at the entrance, watching him take it in. "You still think it's not enough?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes were on a girl, maybe 6 or 7, teaching another how to braid wire into jewelry. "I think," he finally said, "it's the beginning." Corin arrived hours later, having led the last group of stragglers through a different route. His coat was singed, and his metal arm sparked with exposed wiring. But he grinned when he saw Jace. "They bought the decoys," he said. "The scans went clean. How long until they re-strategize?" Velra asked. "A week, maybe less." Jace's jaw tightened. "Then we can't stop here." Velra raised an eyebrow. "You want to go back out?" "I want to go through," he said, "to the source." Corin crossed his arms. "You're talking about the relay core. That's suicide." "Maybe," Jace admitted, "but it's the hub that connects the sweeps, the satellite feeds, the threat assessments. If we can infiltrate the code, even for a moment, we can scramble the next targeting wave." Velra stared at him, her expression unreadable. "You realize what you're suggesting?" "I do," he said. I helped build it. The silence that followed was thick with understanding. It would take everything. Jay spent the next 20 hours sketching out the relay's internal structure from memory. The access points, the rotating encryption cycles, the anomaly response layers. It wasn't just a building. It was a fortress in the sky, orbiting at low altitude in stealth mode, guarded by AI drones and firewalls that reprogrammed intruders on contact. But there was one weakness. The core required manual calibration every 9 days. A team of human techs, indoctrinated and encrypted, was sent up to a tower launched deep within the mountains. That transport ship was due in 30 hours, if they could intercept it. Velra didn't question his plan. She only asked what she needed to do. The mission was madness. 3 people, Jace, Velra, and Corin, armed with stolen IDs, smuggled uniforms, and a wolf. They traveled light, fast, taking an old magrail line that had once served the outposts. Halfway there, they were stopped by a patrol. It nearly cost them everything, but Kyra lunged at just the right moment, tearing the drone with a snarl and a crack of sparks. After that, no one spoke. At the tower, they waited until the guards rotated. Jace used his old clearance to slip inside. His code still worked. That surprised him. Maybe they never expected him to return. Inside, the silence was worse than the desert. Everything was sterile. White walls, humming lights, the soft click of data streams coursing through fiberglass nerves. They moved through the corridors like memories. The launch chamber pulsed with energy. The ship was sleek, shaped like an arrowhead, its bay glowing faintly blue. No alarms. Not yet. They boarded. The ride up was short, just 17 minutes. Long enough for thoughts to scream. Velra sat beside him, eyes closed. Corin checked his weapon systems again. Kyra lay at their feet, alert. When the doors opened, the core waited. It was massive, a spiraling column of data nodes, each thrumming with light. The interface chamber was a platform surrounded by nothing but glass and the curvature of Earth behind it. Jay stepped forward. The override code is still buried in the central stack, he said. But we'll have 60 seconds before the AI detects anomaly triggers. Then make them count, Velra said. He worked fast, fingers flying. The screen responded, first with hesitation, then with reluctant recognition. His code, his handprint, his betrayal. Red alerts began blinking. Kyra growled. Jace, Corin warned. Almost there. The AI's voice chimed in cold and calm. Unrecognized activity. Recalibrating. Defensive protocol active. In 5. Got it, Jace whispered. He slammed the enter key. The lights dimmed. The room shook. Velra caught the railing. What did you do? I scrambled their predictive model. Every drone feed. Every target prioritization. They won't know what to shoot. Permanently? No, he said. Just long enough. The AI blared louder. Security breach confirmed. Erasure commencing. The room sealed. Gas hissed from vents. Corin aimed at the door, but Jace stopped him. Don't, he said. We're not getting out that way. Velra stared at him. You knew. He nodded. I didn't come to escape. I came to end it. She reached for him, fury and grief battling in her eyes. There has to be another way. There's not. Corin grabbed her arm. Velra, look. Outside the window, the drone swarm was breaking apart. Scatter patterns, erratic movement. On the ground, satellite feeds blinked into chaos. Villages disappeared from corporate view. For the first time in decades, they were invisible. Jace turned to Velra. I needed to be more than what they made me. You are, she whispered, tears in her eyes. He stepped back toward the console. Kyra howled. Then the chamber filled with light. The next day, across the desert. Villages that had hidden for generations emerged. Children danced in the sunlight. Fires burned without fear. The sky was quiet. And somewhere, deep in a canyon, a mural began to form, painted by hands small and large. It showed a man standing before a storm, facing alone, while a wolf stood by his side. Velra stood before it, hand pressed to the rock. "He chose us," she whispered. Corin nodded and gave us time. Weeks passed. The system regrew, of course, but it was different now. Slower, less confident. The anomaly never left its logs, a ghost in the wires. And every time it tried to strike, something misfired. Just enough for one more family to slip away. Just enough for a new sanctuary to rise. And so they built, they trained others, taught them how to hide, how to run, and, when needed, how to fight. Jace's codes became their shield, his memory their anthem. The rebellion didn't start with an army. It started with a man who chose to ride the very predator sent to kill him, and change its course. If this story moved you, share it. Let others hear what one person's change can do. Let the world remember that even when systems try to erase us, our choices echo beyond the data. Share the story of Jace, of Velra, of Kyra, and never forget, compassion is not weakness. It's rebellion. It's survival. It's the future.